She risked everything for a single loaf of bread. But what happened after a Comanche warrior stepped in would change not just her life, but the future of her entire family. Stay with me to see how one small act of kindness reshaped destiny in the most unexpected way. Thank you so much for watching and for all your comments. Let me know at the end if you liked this story, and where you're watching from and why you're following this. Emily Parker, a thin 16-year-old with tired blue eyes, moved cautiously through the bustling market of Fort Davis, Texas, 1878. Her worn cotton dress hung loosely on her frame, patched in several places. The weight of responsibility for her 3 younger brothers had aged her beyond her years, especially since their parents' deaths from fever last winter. The family's small farm outside town barely yielded enough to survive. With another harsh winter approaching, and the boys growing hungrier each day, Emily had come to town with their last coins clutched tightly in her palm. $2 won't buy much, the shopkeeper muttered, eyeing her sympathetically. Flour's gone up again. Emily calculated quickly. Just a small sack then, and whatever salt you can spare. As she waited for her meager purchases, her gaze wandered to a freshly baked loaf of bread cooling on the counter. Her stomach growled painfully. That'll be $1.80, the shopkeeper said, pushing the items toward her. Emily counted out the coins, her hand trembling slightly. 20 cents remained, not enough for the bread. The boys hadn't tasted fresh bread in months. Will there be anything else? The shopkeeper asked, turning to assist another customer. In that moment of distraction, Emily made a desperate decision. Her hand darted out, grabbing the warm loaf and tucking it beneath her shawl. Heart pounding, she gathered her purchased items and headed for the door. "Stop, thief!" The shopkeeper's voice boomed across the store. Emily froze, the stolen bread burning against her side like a brand of shame. Rough hands seized her shoulders. The town deputy's face loomed before her. Stealing is a crime, girl. You know better. Please, Emily whispered, tears welling in her eyes. My brothers, they're hungry. The law's the law, the deputy said firmly, though his eyes softened slightly. Mr. Richards here sets the punishment. Either jail time or payment for the bread plus a fine. The shopkeeper crossed his arms. The bread's worth 30 cents. With the fine, that'll be $1. Emily's heart sank. $1 might as well have been 100. I don't have it, she admitted, her voice barely audible. The small crowd that had gathered watched with mixed expressions, some sympathetic, others judgmental. Among them stood a tall, imposing figure whose presence seemed to command the space. Around him, 2 wolves, a respected Comanche warrior in his early 30s, observed the scene with interest. Unlike many of his people, he maintained cordial trading relationships with the whites at Fort Davis, bringing pelts and handcrafted goods to exchange for supplies his band needed. He stepped forward, his movements deliberate and dignified. Years of interaction with white settlers had taught him enough English to understand the girl's predicament. I will pay, he announced, his deep voice silencing the murmurs of the crowd. Emily looked up in shock, meeting the warrior's steady gaze. His face remained impassive, but something in his dark eyes spoke of understanding. He extended a silver dollar to the shopkeeper. This settles the debt? 2 wolves asked. The shopkeeper nodded reluctantly, taking the coin. It does. The deputy released Emily's arm. You're lucky, girl. Don't expect such charity again. 2 wolves turned to Emily. You have brothers to feed. Many brothers? 3, Emily replied softly, confused by this unexpected intervention. There, waiting at our farm. Our parents died last winter. 2 wolves considered this information, his expression revealing nothing of his thoughts. Winter comes soon. Hard times for small farm with no man to work. We manage, Emily said with more conviction than she felt. You steal bread, 2 wolves stated simply. Managing is not good. Before Emily could respond, 2 wolves addressed the shopkeeper again. more flour, beans, dried meat. He placed additional coins on the counter, then turned back to Emily. For brothers. Emily stared at him, bewildered by this generosity from a stranger, a Comanche warrior, no less. Stories of Comanche raids had been told around campfires for years, though the recent peace treaties had brought an uneasy calm to the territory. Why would you help us? She asked. 2 wolves gathered the supplies he'd purchased. I will take to your farm. Show way. Emily hesitated, torn between suspicion and desperate need. The additional food would keep her brothers fed for weeks. My wagon's just outside town, she finally said, deciding that refusing this providence would be foolish, regardless of its source. As they loaded the supplies into her small, weathered wagon, whispers followed them through town. Emily felt the stares but lifted her chin, focusing on what mattered. Her brothers would eat tonight. Little did she know that 2 wolves had recognized something in her, a fierce determination to protect family that mirrored values deeply embedded in his own culture. And he had already begun formulating a plan that would forever change the course of her life. The journey to Emily's farm took nearly 2 hours. 2 wolves rode beside the wagon on his painted horse, his presence both reassuring and unsettling to Emily. Few words passed between them during the ride, but Emily felt his occasional glance, assessing her and their surroundings. The small cabin came into view as they crested a gentle hill. Smoke wisped from the chimney, and 3 small figures burst from the door at the sound of the approaching wagon. Emily! You're back, shouted 7-year-old Thomas, the youngest. His excitement turned to wide-eyed shock when he spotted 2 wolves. The older boys, James and William, aged 12 and 10, stood protectively in front of their younger brother, their expressions wary. It's all right, Emily called out, pulling the wagon to a stop. This is Double Coat, she realized. She didn't know his name. 2 wolves, he supplied, dismounting with fluid grace. He helped me in town, Emily explained, climbing down from the wagon, and brought us extra supplies. James stepped forward, his young face trying to assume the authority of the man of the house. Why would a Comanche help us? 2 wolves regarded the boy with respect rather than amusement. Your sister shows courage, feeds family alone. This deserves help. Emily began unloading the supplies, and after a moment's hesitation, the boys joined in, stealing curious glances at their unusual visitor. Inside the cabin, 2 wolves took in the sparse furnishings with a single sweeping glance. A table with mismatched chairs, 2 narrow beds that clearly housed all 4 siblings, a small wood stove, and shelves holding few possessions told the story of their struggle. You farm this land? 2 wolves asked as Emily set about preparing a simple meal with some of the fresh supplies. We try, she replied, her hands working deftly with the flour. Our father taught James and William some, but ... She trailed off, not wanting to admit how poorly they were managing. 2 wolves stepped to the small window, looking out at the untended fields. The soil was good, but the lack of experienced hands was evident. A few scraggly chickens pecked in the yard, and a thin milk cow stood in a small pen. Winter comes soon, he observed again. This is not enough. Emily's shoulders tensed. We'll make do. 2 wolves turned to face her. 4 children alone. Bad times coming. Snow, cold, hunger. What choice do we have? Emily's voice cracked slightly. The boys need me. 2 wolves sat at the table, his imposing presence somehow not seeming out of place in the humble cabin. My people live well. Hunt buffalo deer. Plenty food for winter. Good shelters, warm furs. Emily paused in her work, sensing something significant. In his words, come with me, 2 wolves said simply. All of you. Live with my band until spring. The proposition hung in the air like smoke. Emily stared at him, speechless. You mean, go to a Comanche camp? James asked, his voice rising in disbelief. We have peace now, 2 wolves explained. My band trades with whites. We camp 3 days' ride from here. Good hunting grounds. Why would you offer this? Emily finally found her voice that 2 wolves' dark eyes held hers steadily. Children should not starve. My people value family. We take in those who need shelter. But we're white, William blurted out. Hunger does not see color, 2 wolves replied. My people have taken in Mexican children, white children before. Some stay, become Comanche. Some return to their people. When older, Emily's mind raced. The prospect was both terrifying and tempting. They had barely survived last winter with their parents alive. This winter, alone. We can't just leave, she protested weakly. This farm was our parents' dream. Farm waits for spring, 2 wolves countered. Dead children cannot farm. The harsh truth of his words struck Emily like a physical blow. She looked at her brothers, too thin, growing too fast for their worn clothes, their eyes already knowing too much of hardship. We would be guests, she asked carefully, not prisoners. 2 wolves nodded. Guests who work, like all in camp. Boys learn to hunt, you learn women's work. All eat, all warm. And we could return in spring to our farm, Emily pressed. If you wish, 2 wolves agreed. Decide now. I leave tomorrow at sunrise. That night, after 2 wolves had gone to sleep in the barn at his own insistence, Emily and her brothers huddled together on their beds, voices lowered in urgent discussion. We can't trust him, James insisted. Pa always said the Comanche were dangerous. Pa also said times were changing, Emily reminded him. And we've heard that some bands are peaceful now. I'm scared, Thomas whispered, pressing against Emily's side. William, always practical, spoke up. We don't have enough to make it through winter. You know that, Emily. Emily stroked Thomas's hair absently. I know. If he wanted to hurt us, he could have already, William continued. Instead, he brought food. Emily stared into the darkness, weighing impossible choices. Risk taking her brothers into an unknown life among people they'd been taught to fear, or face the near certainty of starvation as winter closed in around their failing farm. We'll go, she finally whispered, just until spring, just to survive. In the morning, when she told 2 wolves their decision, something like approval flickered in his eyes. You choose wisely, he said. Pack only what you need. Leave the rest. As the children gathered their few precious belongings, Emily cast a last look around the cabin that had been their home. A daguerreotype of their parents stood on the mantel, their most treasured possession. She wrapped it carefully in a cloth and tucked it into her bundle. We'll be back, she whispered to the empty room, a promise to her parents and to herself. We'll return. What Emily couldn't know as they closed the cabin door behind them was how completely this decision would transform their lives, and that the journey they were beginning would reshape their understanding of family, belonging, and home in ways they could never have imagined. The journey to the Comanche camp took 4 days rather than the anticipated 3. 2 wolves led them steadily northwest, away from settlements and into increasingly wild country. Emily rode in the wagon with Thomas, while James and William alternated between riding in the back and walking alongside. 2 wolves had insisted they bring the milk cow, chickens, and the family's 2 goats, saying they would be valuable additions to the camp. Each night, 2 wolves taught the boys to make camp properly, how to find the right shelter from wind, how to build a fire that produced heat but little smoke, how to set a simple perimeter that would alert them to approaching animals. On the 3rd evening, as they sat around the campfire, Thomas finally gathered the courage to ask the question that had been on all their minds. Do you have children? He asked 2 wolves, his small voice curious. A shadow passed over the warrior's face. I had a son. And daughter, the past tense hung heavy in the air. What happened to them? Thomas persisted, ignoring Emily's warning. Look. 2 wolves stared into the fire. 3 winters ago. Sickness came to camp. Many died. His voice remained steady, but Emily noticed how his hands tightened around the stick he was using to stir the fire. "My wife also." "I'm sorry," Emily said softly. 2 wolves nodded once in acknowledgement. Life continues. Tribe needs strong warriors, even those with grief. Later, when the boys had fallen asleep, Emily found herself still awake, watching 2 wolves as he kept guard. The revelation about his family had shifted something in her understanding of him. "Is that why you're helping us?" she asked quietly. "Because you lost your children?" 2 wolves didn't look at her, his gaze fixed on the darkness beyond their camp. "Perhaps. Or perhaps Creator put you in my path for reason. What will your people think about you bringing white children to camp?" "My father is band chief," 2 wolves replied. "He respects my judgment. Others will accept his decision." Emily pulled her blanket tighter around her shoulders. "And the women, will they accept us?" At this, 2 wolves finally turned to look at her. "Women of my band are strong, kind to children. My mother, Yellow Flower, will teach you." "Teach me what?" "Huh. To be Comanche woman," he said simply. Emily felt a flicker of alarm. "But I'm not. We're just staying until spring." 2 wolves studied her face in the dying firelight. "Yes, until spring." Something in his tone suggested he might have other thoughts on the matter, but he offered nothing more. On the 4th day, as the sun began its descent, they crested a hill and Emily caught her first glimpse of the Comanche camp spread across a protected valley. Dozens of tipis formed a loose circle near a winding creek lined with cottonwood trees. Horses, more horses than Emily had ever seen in one place, grazed on the surrounding grasslands. Smoke from cooking fires rose in thin columns, and even from a distance, she could see people moving about their daily tasks. Thomas gripped her hand tightly. "So many," he whispered. 2 wolves raised his arm in a signal, and a high, ululating call went out from a sentry posted on a nearby ridge. The camp seemed to pause, heads turning toward them. "They have been expecting us," 2 wolves explained. "News travels fast." As they approached, a delegation rode out to meet them, 5 men, including an elder whose bearing immediately suggested authority. 2 wolves dismounted and spoke rapidly in Comanche, occasionally gesturing toward Emily and the boys. The elder 2 wolves' father, Emily presumed, studied them intently before nodding once. He spoke a few words, and the tension in the air seemed to dissipate. "My father welcomes you," 2 wolves translated. "You will stay in my sister's tipi. She has space since her oldest son took a wife." The next hours passed in a blur as they were led into camp. Eyes followed them everywhere, some curious, some wary, some openly hostile. The children huddled close to Emily, overwhelmed by the strangeness of it all, the unfamiliar smells of smoke and tanned hides, the sounds of a language they couldn't understand, the different styles of dress and hair. 2 wolves' sister, Bird, Woman, welcomed them to her tipi with cautious courtesy. A widow with 2 children of her own, a boy about William's age and a girl a few years younger, she showed Emily where they would sleep and explained through gestures and the few English words she knew how the household operated. That evening, they were brought to the central fire where the band had gathered. 2 wolves' father spoke at length, his deep voice carrying authority. Though Emily couldn't understand his words, she recognized their formal nature. "He explains why you are here," 2 wolves told her quietly. "Says you will learn our ways while you stay. Says children are sacred gift, no matter their color." Not everyone seemed to agree. Emily noticed several warriors watching with disapproval, and some women whispered behind their hands while glancing in their direction. After the gathering, 2 wolves walked them back to Birdwoman's tipi. "Tomorrow you begin to learn," he said. "Boys will come with me. You stay with women." "What will they learn?" Emily asked, glancing at her brothers. "To be useful," 2 wolves replied. "James is old enough to learn bow. William will help with horses. Thomas will gather with smaller children." Emily nodded slowly, trying to quell her anxiety about being separated from them. And me? You learn what Comanche women know. Make food. Prepare hides, sew clothing. Two wolves paused. Yellow flower will come for you at sunrise. That night, as they lay together on their shared sleeping mats, Thomas snuggled against Emily's side. Will we be okay here? He whispered. Emily stroked his hair, watching the shadows cast by the low fire on the tippy walls. Bird Woman and her children were already asleep on the other side of the fire. Yes, she whispered back, with more confidence than she felt. We'll learn their ways just for a little while. And in spring, we'll go home. But as she drifted toward sleep, Emily wondered what home would mean after this experience. Already, the cabin seemed distant, like something from another life. Here, surrounded by the sounds of the camp, the soft whinnying of horses, the low conversations from nearby tipis, the rustle of the wind against the hide walls, she felt strangely suspended between worlds, and somewhere in that suspension, she sensed both danger and possibility. By February, the harshest part of winter had descended upon the plains. Snow blanketed the ground around the Comanche camp, and the creek had frozen solid enough for the children to slide across its surface. 3 months had passed since Emily and her brothers had arrived, and the rhythm of Comanche life had become familiar, if not entirely comfortable. Emily sat cross-legged beside Yellow Flower in the older woman's tipi, her fingers working methodically at a piece of deerskin. The chief's wife had taken Emily under her wing with unexpected patience, teaching her the women's skills with firm but kind instruction. Good, Yellow Flower nodded approvingly in her limited English, examining Emily's stitching. You learn fast. Emily smiled, feeling a small surge of pride. The compliment meant something coming from Yellow Flower, who rarely offered praise. Outside, she could hear her brothers' voices mingled with those of the Comanche children. James had become Two Wolves' shadow, eagerly absorbing hunting skills and warrior training. William had developed an affinity for horses that had earned him respect from the horse masters of the band. Even Thomas had adapted, running wild with the younger children and picking up Comanche words faster than any of them. Two Wolves watches you, Yellow Flower commented suddenly, her dark eyes studying Emily's face. Emily's hand stilled. What do you mean? Yellow Flower's weathered face creased in a knowing smile. Son lost wife, needs new one. You need husband to protect brothers. Heat rushed to Emily's cheeks. We're returning to our farm in spring, she said firmly. Though the words sounded hollow even to her own ears, Yellow Flower shrugged, returning to her work. Spring comes, then you decide. Later that afternoon, Emily watched as Two Wolves led the boys back into camp from a hunting expedition. James proudly carried a rabbit he had caught himself. The change in her brothers over these months was remarkable. Their frames had filled out from regular meals. Their skin had darkened from exposure to the winter sun, and they moved with a new confidence. Two Wolves caught her gaze and approached while the boys ran to show their catch to Bird Woman. Your brother has good eye, he said, his breath forming clouds in the cold air. Will be strong hunter. Thank you for teaching him, Emily replied, acutely aware of Yellow Flower's earlier words. Two Wolves gestured toward the hills. Walk with me? Emily hesitated, then nodded, pulling her buffalo robe, a gift from Yellow Flower, tighter around her shoulders. They walked in silence beyond the edge of camp, their footsteps crunching in the snow. You have learned much, Two Wolves observed. Yellow Flower says you work hard. There's always so much to do, Emily replied. It's not so different from farm life in that way. Two Wolves stopped, turning to face her. But different in other ways. Emily nodded, gazing out over the winter landscape. Yes, very different. Better? Worse? Emily considered the question carefully. Different, she repeated. The boys are thriving here. I've never seen them so alive. She paused. But it's not our world. Could become your world, Two Wolves said quietly. Emily looked at him. really looked at him, seeing the man who had saved them from starvation, who had patiently taught her brothers, who had ensured they were accepted into his community. Two wolves. Listen first, he interrupted gently. I lost family. You lost parents. Your brothers need father. You need. He hesitated. Protection. Are you suggesting marriage? He confirmed. Stay with my people. Become my wife. Brothers become my sons. Emily's heart raced. She'd sensed this coming, had seen the looks, had heard the whispers among the women. But hearing it spoken aloud made it real. I don't know what to say, she whispered. Say nothing now, two wolves replied. Think until full moon. Then decide. That night, Emily lay awake long after the others had fallen asleep, her mind churning with impossible choices. The idea of marrying two wolves, a man from a completely different world, seemed unthinkable. And yet, the alternative ... The farm would be waiting, true, but for what? More struggle, more hunger, more fear? Here, her brothers were learning to survive, to thrive. Here, they had found a community that, despite initial wariness, had taken them in, and two wolves. She couldn't deny the growing respect she felt for him. His quiet strength, his patience, his obvious care for her brothers. Was it enough? Could respect grow into something more? The full moon came a week later. Emily found two wolves at the edge of camp, watching the moonrise over the plains. I've made my decision, she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Two wolves turned to her, his face impassive but his eyes questioning. My brothers need stability, Emily began carefully. They're learning to be strong here, in ways they never could on our farm. Two wolves waited silently for her to continue. I will marry you, she said finally. But I need your promise that if any of us ever wish to return to the white world, you won't stop us. Two wolves considered her words. This is fair, he agreed. But I think, in time, you will not wish to leave. The wedding ceremony took place 2 days later, a simplified version of traditional Comanche customs out of respect for Emily's different background. Yellow Flower had prepared a special dress for her, adorned with beadwork and quills. James, standing tall and serious beyond his 12 years, formally gave his sister away in place of their father Dot, as Emily stood beside two wolves, while the chief spoke the binding words. She caught sight of her brothers watching with expressions ranging from Thomas's excitement to William's cautious approval to James's complex mix of emotions. They were no longer the desperate children who had fled their failing farm months ago. They had been transformed by this place, these people, this life so different from anything they had known before, and Emily realized that she too had changed. The girl who had stolen bread out of desperation would always be part of her, but she was becoming someone new, someone stronger, someone who had chosen this path not just out of necessity, but out of a growing belief that here, among these people, once considered enemies, her family might not just survive but truly live. That night, as two wolves led her to what was now their tipi, Emily paused to look up at the vast canopy of stars spanning the winter sky. Have regrets? Two wolves asked softly. Emily shook her head slowly. No, just wondering at how life can change so completely in the space of a season. Two wolves followed her gaze upward. My people say Creator's path not always straight. Sometimes takes strange turns. Emily smiled at that. A very strange turn indeed, from stealing bread to becoming a Comanche wife. Two wolves took her hand, his touch gentle but sure. Not so strange. Strong woman finds way to protect family. This is same in all worlds. As they ducked into the warmth of the tipi, Emily carried with her the knowledge that spring would still come, and with it, choices would remain. But for now, in this moment, she had found an unexpected peace in the arms of a man from a world not her own, and in the promise of a future none of them could have imagined when a desperate girl stole a loaf of bread and a Comanche warrior paid her debt.